ABC y del Marriott Content Studio. Después de esto, aquí me sorprende en inglés. Y sobre todo, además, es una de las personas más inspiradoras que creo que podemos encontrarnos en el mundo del branded content, así que, por favor, muchísima atención. Please, 40 minutes. Gracias. Con ustedes. Lo digo ya. Vais a aplaudir, pero fuerte, por favor. Seguro. Tiene que irse bien, David Beebe.
Hello. I am from Los Angeles, United States. I apologize for the embarrassment that our country is for our president. We're doing everything we can. So today I'm going to talk about more premium content. So you heard a lot about content marketing and Robert Rose talking about brand publishing. What I'm going to focus on is think about brand films, documentaries, webisodes, things that have so much value that are big productions in different formats that can go on to be licensed to other distributors. So a lot of what Robert was talking about, but at a different scale. And some of those are one-offs, but a lot of them can be bigger than that, and they can really create an ecosystem of content. So it doesn't have to be one film. You can make 3, you can make 4, you can think like a franchise, like a media company. Does anyone know what this is? Satellite dish. So this is a dish that I grew up, this is how I watch TV. This is in the house. This is where I grew up, on a farm. And you would have a dish in the yard, and inside the house there was a box, and if you wanted to watch a channel, you would scan. Right? You took the big clunky remote like this big, and then you switched. Right? And the dish would move, and that's how you watch TV. And it was classic TV where you had to watch commercials and everything else, but the really exciting thing was that if you scanned to the right channels and transponders on the satellite, you could watch like behind the scenes of news. So you could watch before they go on air when they're doing their hair and makeup, and they're saying all the things that they wouldn't say live on TV, you could watch. So I always thought that I wanted to be a news broadcaster. And I actually did an internship at ABC News and decided it wasn't for me. This is the country store where I grew up on a farm. So I had a lot of time on my hands. This is my fashion. Pretty good growing up. Then I went on to serve in the military, the U.S. Coast Guard, and went to training in Cape May, New Jersey. And then after that, ended up being stationed in Los Angeles. And that's where I got into the entertainment business. And just a background, started working at a company called DirecTV, which was a satellite company. A little bit different than the one that I showed you. Smaller dishes. And spent a lot of time there and got in learning post-production and production. And then went to Showtime Cable Network and worked on shows there. DVD bonus features. Does anyone still use DVDs? Here? No? So we do all the behind the scenes and put them on the DVD and sell them, and then went on to Disney ABC and on the television side. And then Marriott called and said, we want to do that content thing. They had really no idea what it meant. But they knew one thing, that they had to change the way that they were marketing, the way that they were building relationships with customers. And so we built, so I left Los Angeles and went to DC, and we built what would become the Marriott Content Studio. And a couple of reasons that it works. So when you think about if you're launching a content studio at your brand, or if you're a production company and building one, or a publisher and you're building one. Specifically to the brand side, you see a lot of brands want to launch the content studios. One of the reasons that it doesn't work is because it doesn't have support at the highest levels, or it doesn't have its own budget. Those are usually the 2 reasons that they fail. And then Third one would be that someone comes in and they want to create all this change and shut everything else off, and go on and make big productions, and that doesn't work either. One of the things we'll talk about today is the 2 Bellman franchise that we produced at Marriott. So when I talked about films, right, big productions, it was not a one-off. This was about engaging an audience and building a franchise. So a whole media ecosystem, from the film, behind the scenes, making of, to the website, capturing all that data and retargeting and engaging with them. And so we shot the first one in Los Angeles, the second one in Dubai, and the third one in Seoul. And we went on to make about 10 different films like that. We'll talk about actually how we actually made money and made it a profit center. And that money went back in to do more marketing. So marketing can actually fund itself. First, let's take a little ride back. We'll talk about a lot of branded content. And these are some examples from way back in the day. Brands have actually been doing this probably before they knew what they were doing. So this is an example of a company that had to figure out a way, how do I get people to drive more so that they need to buy my products? Does anyone know what company this would be? DLL? Good chance? Right. The Michelin guy. Right? So 1900s, when cars came out, they had to figure out a way, how do we get people to drive so they need more tires? Right? So they created the guide of where to eat at when you're driving. Right? And this book, actually, when it first came out, it was a complete failure. And the founders would go on, and they would find it like in gas stations not being used, and they actually started to charge for it. And today, obviously, it's turned into a much larger thing than just the Michelin guide. Go to, how about this one? So, in the 50s, 2 people were out hunting birds, and they had a debate of which bird was the fastest bird. Was it the golden plover or the red grouse? Right, so they couldn't decide. So they were having a debate, and they went back to a bar. And while they're there, they're continuing this debate. This brand was Guinness Book of Records. Right, so that's where that came from. So they're thinking and acting like a media company. And of course, this has gone on to become a much larger thing of how they've really launched gaming, digital, website, way beyond what they were originally doing. So, really what we talked about, and you guys know this, is that this relationship with consumers has really been flipped on its head, right? So if we look at the top there, that's how, well, that's not how I watch TV, that's a little old picture. But how about the bottom picture? How many people can relate to that one now? Right? A lot of screens, people ignoring each other, not watching together. And I think when you look at least in the United States, there's 3 things that got us there, these 3 dates. March 31st, 1999, April 23rd, 2005, and June 29th, 2007. Any guesses what happened on these 3 dates that got us to this point? That changed that relationship? Start with the first one in the US, it was TiVo. I was working at DirecTV at this time, and TiVo came out, and this was the first time that we really, that consumers could now skip commercials, right? We were now giving them the choice to fast forward. And when TiVo first came out, they did not enable this feature when they introduced it at CES, when they talked about it. A competitor of theirs did end up getting sued. But this is one of the first things that happened technology-wise, right? That now the consumer can fast forward. And today, of course, now you can skip and you don't even watch commercials, it does it for you. Second one, this is the first YouTube video was uploaded. I was working at Disney ABC, so we were producing television shows, and around then it was around Lost, Ugly Betty, Desperate Housewives. And YouTube came out, and we said, that's cute. These kids sitting in their basement making videos. We're the real producers. We know what we're doing. Well, you all know what's happened since then, right? These, quote, kids have built media companies, and they have subscribers and more followers than a lot of cable channels in the US. So this actually enabled us, creators, anyone, to now go direct to that consumer, right? So in the television space back then, if you wanted to reach someone, you have to buy the advertising, right? But now brands and creators can go direct. And then the iPhone, the thing that's in our pockets, a television station that we have, right? So those three things collectively really put the consumer in control. And now they could skip our messages as advertisers, right? They didn't have to watch them. They could fast forward, they could turn them off, they could do whatever they want. And in many cases, they started creating their own content. And talk about now everybody is a media company. How many people would agree with that we're all media companies? Both as brands, but as individuals. So let's look at the individual level. All of us in here is probably on our phones, on Twitter, or posting or sharing things. So let's compare that to a media company. Right, so as a media company, I make content. All of us are making content on our phones. Whether it's an email, a photo, right, a video. So we're producing content just like a media company does. We're then distributing that content onto a channel, right? So you might decide this photo is going on LinkedIn, or Twitter, or Facebook, or whatever social platform based on the audience. That's the exact same thing that a media company does. Create content for the audience on that channel. And then you post it, right? So you distribute it, same thing as a media company. And then you wait and see what the response is, what your ratings are, essentially, right? So that's the exact same thing. So we're all creating content, we're all competing for attention and time. So when I say everyone's a media company, that's what I mean by that idea of that we are just like media companies, and today brands are now operating like that. We're creating this battleground for attention. And I think today marketing is now a zero-sum game. What I mean by that is that winning, what it takes to win, whatever that may be, right? So when I was at Marriott, I was winning the booking, or whatever your business is, right? It means taking attention away from somebody else. And those that capture attention obviously gain the most influence. So I want to talk a little bit about building the Marriott Content Studio and give some insight into that and why we did it. It wasn't to go out and just make cool films and documentaries and TV shows and webisodes. It was what we talked about this morning, that if consumers, right, if they don't want to be interrupted, that as brands, we're going to think like a media company, right? We have to stop interrupting what consumers are interested in and become what they're interested in. So we need to think and act like a media company, building that audience and then monetizing that audience. So this is actually a picture from the Hot Shops. A lot of people don't know this, but Marriott actually started as a restaurant in Washington, D.C. The Marriotts drove from Salt Lake City, opened up the first Hot Shop. This is the one now. Today there's a big mall there. They grew this into one of the largest restaurants at the time in the U.S. with locations all over the place and had a lot of different inventions that they did and innovations in the business. And then as roadways started coming in, they said, well, let's get into the hotel business. And obviously they did, and today Marriott has 30 brands. So to walk through some of the different formats, so if you're thinking about creating content, so you could have brand publishing, content marketing. Again, I want to talk about the bigger things: brand films, documentaries, webisodes, scripted, unscripted, thinking and acting like a media company. Just like I was a producer at Disney, ABC is creating content, right? So the first thing that we did was To Bellman. Now this was scripted film. Now we did not want to create just a one-off. We wanted to think big picture, right? So just as Disney would produce a bunch of films, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and build a franchise and build an audience, we did the same thing with these three films. Now these were shorter, so you could put them in a short form category, but anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. All three of them had have 7, 10, 11 million views on YouTube, but more importantly, we also did film festivals, right? And through them tapped into a different audience. But because this was true storytelling, and we never interrupted the story, the brand, the hotel in this case, was actually a character, right? It was the platform which the story was told. So not once did you see anywhere, oh, welcome to Marriott Hotel. Do you love our pool? Isn't our restaurant great? Do you want some towels? That never happened. It was just part of the story. We did French Kiss as well, and this was shot in Paris. Now, the idea here creatively, again, scripted, using romance. Of course, that's what you shoot in Paris. And we shot 50% of it inside the hotel and 50% outside the hotel, iconic locations. Because when we were shooting at those locations, like Eiffel Tower, wherever it may be, we wanted to engage people and say, get them to think, oh, I've wanted to go there. I've always wanted to go there, or I remember when I was there, or I want to go back, and hopefully they would book. And so a lot of people say, that's great, you made the film, the comments were great, it's got 10 million views, but what's the ROI? And I think as marketers, we become too obsessed with what's the ROI. Now, when we set out to do this one, what we did, I said, okay, I actually want to see if we can drive sales, room bookings. Right, so as Robert talked about, entertaining, just providing that value, simply getting them into our world. What we did is, if you watch that film, you were presented a special offer. So a sales package, essentially. You too can stay at this hotel that you've just seen. You can get a great rate, you can meet the GM, it's a VIP experience, chocolates, champagne on arrival. That sales package did $500,000 in room sales in 60 days. That film cost about $500,000 to make. So if you look at that, just alone, just look at the money that we drove to that one hotel, the film, it's zeroed out. Right? But today it continues. That film now is being licensed to other distributors, Netflix, Hulu, other over-the-top apps. It plays on airlines. All of those people, all of those other people who have screens, right, are licensing that content, just like a media company, because they see the value in it. It's pure entertainment. So the brand now is places it would have never been, or places that the brand would have had to pay to get into before. But because it invested in content and storytelling at that premium level, way up here, right? Now, marketing started to fund itself. So all those license fees would come back into marketing to pay for more marketing. I'll go back. Some of the other ones here, open invitation. This was unscripted. So this was Bill and Juliana Rancic. We shot this in Italy, the first episode in Venice. And the idea here, not a groundbreaking concept, food travel show, meeting Michelin star chefs. So not completely original, but what was original that was presented by a brand. So a half-hour format of them going to the hotel, experiencing the city, meeting the locals, what's it like, again, to inspire people to travel. That's the only point of that. We weren't trying to sell anything, right? But it actually did drive sales because there was a sales package. And then this show went on to be licensed. So again, it recouped the cost of the initial investment. Now, there were no partners in this, meaning we did not work with a brand, a publishing, a TV station, anything like that. The brand fully 100% funded these productions because we wanted to own the IP. That's where the value comes from. You start to build up that IP library. So as we did that, that library becomes more valuable. Again, just like a media company. And multiple episodes and start to sell them. And then you get the revenue. Always creating that sales package. We're able to track. Someone watched this and they made a purchase. All right? And then the licensing fees, which would go on to fund more marketing. But going beyond that, just as a media company would, we did premieres and events We make music, original music, all that stuff's on Spotify and iTunes, all that's selling. We brought in big artists. So it was multi-platform. It just wasn't the film. Right? We were engaging audiences that we would have never engaged before. And then we brought the artists and did concerts at the hotel. So all the ways to engage, not only online, and in festivals, and on screens all over, but then offline as well, experiential. I remember we did one of the first concerts, the Marriott Rewards members, so they have a board, right, there where you can go in and talk to each other and whatnot and share tips on points. And somebody said, it was an older generation, said, hotels are meant for sleeping, not music concerts. And I said, well, okay, yes, maybe, but we're not trying to market to you. And in fact, when we also made 2 Bellman, I remember very clearly one of the executives said, I don't understand, I don't like this, essentially. And I remember I looked at him and said, well, it wasn't made for you. Right, because it wasn't. We were trying to tap into a particular audience on a channel that liked music and parkour and movement and dance. One of the other things we also built was the command center. So we talked about creating this premium content, right? But this was called MLive. And the idea behind MLive was that if you take all this data, right, over here, bring it into a room, which you see there, and visualize it in the moment, you can also drive revenue, and you can create content in real time. So there was planned social, like social media that people, or content that was being produced at all different levels. Everything from brand publishing, to the films, to magazines, to books, everything that was being done. But in this room, all this data comes in. Imagine the power you have if you bring all this data into a room and visualize it and connect it on the back end. Give you an example of what happens in there. So we've got social data, third-party data, loyalty data, you're authenticated, we know who you are. So, 2 interesting things that can happen there. If you actually tweet and your account is public or in Instagram, in that room, they know who you are, lifetime value spent with the company, your loyalty rank, all this other data that comes back. The other cool thing that comes in this room is location data from the hotels, beacon data. So at any given time, I can see, you can see in this room, that you've got 10 people standing at the Marriott Marquis in New York Times Square at the check-in next to the Starbucks. Okay, because I can see that data, we've connected on the back end. Location, social data, they have the app, they've given permission. You can now send them a custom message, custom content in the moment. Say, here's a Starbucks free coffee, right? Or surprising delight. So let's say you're at the pool and you share a photo, or you're at a wedding, you're having a great time, you don't tag the brand, but because all of the hotels are geo-fenced and capturing all of the public data, you can actually do room upgrades, surprising delight moments. So I wanted to share this because think about all this data that you have. So the other thing that we use this for is to help inform us of what content to make. And we didn't 100% depend on the data, of course, but we used it in conjunction with everything else, marketing campaigns and other things as well to say, maybe there's an audience over here that's interested in this. Let's try to make content for them and see how do they respond to it. So we make content in real time at a very small level, and then build it up from there. So you start to identify these audiences and engage and use that data to do so. This is Marriott Traveler, which was a digital magazine, right? So Robert talked a lot about this, very common today. This is another way that now you can transform marketing into a revenue center, obviously. So this magazine online, it has nothing to do with any of the hotels. It doesn't talk about the hotels. It's just a destination guide in the cities. It is global, it's in multiple languages, and it's got content, what to do, just again, providing value. This is an ATM. for Marriott. It drives a massive amount of bookings. Now, it took a few years to build that up, and of course there's an advantage when you have 120 million reward members, you can drive a lot of traffic to that thing. But what happens is you build that traffic, just like a media company, now they're selling advertising back to other partners. Same thing when we make the films, right? So people say, that's great. It's very expensive, though, to make that. Well, who else, if you look, if you're thinking about making something, who else could be part of what you're making? So when we made all of the films or documentaries, or I work with brands today to produce premium content, I say, what other brands, products, would naturally be part of this story so it doesn't interrupt it? So I would go to Toomey, I would go to BMW, and we go to everything that we would need and say, just like a producer would, we're making a film, here's the plan, here's the distribution strategy, don't you want to be a part of it? And they would either do product trade out or actually pay. So think about it, a brand is now going out and getting other brands to pay in their content to help support the budget. So often, a lot of times when people start, how many people in here would have produced something and the first thing that you want to do or someone wants to do is talk about the creator? Right? That's the first place people go. Let's talk about how exciting this is. And I say, don't start there at all. You're thinking about creating true brand, like storytelling at this level, don't start with the creative. Identify that purpose, that why of the content. How are you going to measure it is key. So I talked about ROI. Think about, not all content actually needs to drive a sale. I think we're too obsessed with that. Some of it could just be about building relationships. Some of it could be about just introducing a brand. Right, so we did a web series for Moxie Hotels. It had nothing to do with trying to drive sales. It was just purely trying to introduce a new brand. Think about what's that master narrative that you want to own as a brand. What's that story? Every single thing produced for a brand that should ladder up. It should connect, meaning you could tell it's from that brand. Right? So you don't have a bunch of one-off pieces, content all over the place. It's sitting in different silos. It's all got to connect so that no content ever has a dead end. But oftentimes we hear a lot about brand storytelling. And I want to point out, it's important here, the difference between a narrative and a story when you're thinking about brand storytelling or creating content. Right? So that narrative is that overarching, way up here. Right? And you have the stories to support that. So if you're thinking about producing, start with ask, what is that narrative? What are we trying to ladder all of our content up to do? In Marriott's case, it was become the world's favorite travel company. To get people, just simply, I just want to get them to think about traveling. If I can get them to do that, I have a chance to actually get them to book a room. Talk about formats a little bit. So another important thing here is scripted, unscripted, and then also the type of content. Are you using humor to tell the story? Is it a documentary? So think really big, but also not just one-off. How can I create something like, let's say it's a documentary, how does this ladder up to the rest of the campaigns that are going on in a brand, right? Or the other content that's out there, the other stories, so it's not sitting in a silo. One of the interesting things that I do with brands today is you take a look at everything that they're doing, and almost the majority of the time, none of it connects. None of it feeds back or supports each other. So not that the creative yet. And then the people. So if you're thinking about launching or creating content, you've got to really bring in the right people. This is super, super important. So I want to talk about some of the people that I brought in and hired, and that I work with brands today to bring in and advise them who to hire. If you're thinking about doing brand publishing, go into the world of journalism. Right? Those are the people that worked at media companies, magazines, books, whatever it may be, that are really true storytellers. If you're going to be making a film, go into the world of filmmaking or TV or whatever it is. Tap into that creative community and build a really strong relationship with them. Now, one of the things that I always advise on is that you have the most direct relationship with talent or with your creative partners. So the agencies will probably not like this, but I try to minimize the amount of agencies or people involved to get that most direct relationship. Because what happens when you got too many people, you know this, it just ends up being a complete shit show. Right? And the creative's not good, and you just made an ad. So, in everything that we produce, if you're a brand, I advise hire an executive producer type person. Hire someone who both left brain, right brain, gets creative, gets strategy, and can help guide these projects, and can help develop ideas in-house. Right? I don't say go make everything in-house, because a lot of brands have done that, and they made a lot of bad mistakes because it's so in-house, and they have blinders on, and some bad content gets made that the audience does not respond to. But get someone who can attach things to marketing strategies and to the business, has a creative sense, has a great relationship with the creative community and the creators out there to help guide that project. So talking about brand producers, right? A combination of brand and producers. Those are the type of people that you want to have in there. Not creative yet. And just quickly map out content distribution ecosystem. Okay, so I talked about when we made the film. It wasn't just making a film or making a TV show or making a webisode series and going home. It was how do I create content of so many different formats and different types from the one piece that I'm creating a whole media world, an entire platform. So if I'm making a film, thinking like a producer, what am I going to do? I'm going to have behind the scenes, making of, blogs, photos, just like any other studio would, right? I'm going to do a podcast. How do I create that experiential activity, right? So am I going to do a premiere and bring my best customers in to watch the film and engage with them? And now guess what? Now the brand is covered in all the trade magazines, entertainment that it would have never been covered in before. So it's thinking about how do I put my content at middle, being consumer-centric, but building all the different types of content, not just one piece. How do you keep supporting and building it across multiple channels, multiple platforms, and formats? These are my 3 rules of branded content, which are, you've heard today, inform, entertain, and provide value. If it doesn't do these 3 things, you've got to go back to the drawing table. This is a framework, right, the slide's messed up, that I use, content, community, and commerce. So think about this in everything that you're creating. If I make content and scale content, right, I can build a community around it. Once I have that community, then how do I actually drive commerce? This is a framework you can use on anything that you're creating. Then you can get to the creative. One thing that I also talk about is avoid the sea of sameness. This is a really big problem because as brands, what we all do is we say, oh, that brand's doing it, that industry is doing, that's what they're doing, so we should do that too. Well, what's happened, so let's look at travel. If you follow hotel social media accounts, what do you often see on there? It's the same photo of a creator, influencer, with their hair done, they look beautiful, they just woke up, they've got a full spread, right? More food than anyone can eat over a week, right? And they're just like, having a great day, right? A rise and shine. And what's become of that is that in travel, all the brands are doing that. And it worked for a while, but it doesn't work, because as consumers, people are tired of seeing the same thing. And it's not real, it's not authentic. And in fact, if you look at a lot of those photos of the influencers, right, they've got their coffee cup. If you look closely, there's not even any coffee in there. It's just an empty cup, right? So it's not real. So just because your competitor or other people in this space are doing something doesn't mean you have to be just like them. The same thing in banking. All the content in banking and finance is the same. Right? There's very few that are actually doing something different. Talking about that's how you start transforming marketing from a cost center to a revenue center. It's a little bit different in the sense of I'm talking about investing, owning the IP, and then licensing that IP and doing sales as well. And in real time in the command center. Again, always asking why. Why are we doing this? So important to do. Like, who are we making this for, and why are we doing it? Have a very clear, what I call an elevator pitch. So if someone asks what you're working on, in 2 sentences you can explain what it is, and why you're doing it, and how you're going to measure it. And finally, never try to please everybody. Because you never will. Right? You always, as creatives, as we know, the creative is subjective. Everyone's going to have an opinion. And this is a true story. So when we did Tube Element the first time, nobody inside the company had any idea what a film script looked like, which was great. Right? So we did it and made it. By the time we were making the 3rd film, not joking, the security guard got a hold of the script and was giving notes. So we actually developed a creative process where in reviewing, and this is another tip you could take, when we would bring in the executives to actually watch the content, screen a film, we would sit everybody in a room, and I learned this at Disney. You sit in a room, and if you can't attend, if you're heading up your group, if you can attend, send someone, that's the rule, that represents you, and you get to watch it twice in the room. And that's the one time you get to give your creative feedback. That's it. And then until you do the second time for the second round. A link does not get shared, it does not get passed around, it does not get, because that's how it ends up with the security guard, or before you know it, some executive's mother is giving you notes, or their kid, right? So think about when you're reviewing creative. That's something that Disney. Now that sounds hard to do probably, but start to see if you can give it a try. And with that, we're a little bit over. But that's what we're talking about, the ROI of brand storytelling and how you can transform marketing from a cost center to a revenue center. Thank you.